Hello, this is Jason from ShySnake, and I wanted to talk a little bit about SpyDNA. I've got a few questions to answer, and then I'll talk a little about our plans for early access. So I wanted to start talking about grenades. So I'm in RTC now. You can see this is one of the grenades in the game. We actually only have the one type at the moment, but that'll expand very quickly. So being a standard item, you can see it has the normal things that you would see in one of our items, including the two important things here are going to be the weight, which is here, it's just 0.3 kilos. And then down at the bottom you'll see an explosive type. And I can double click that and open it. The reason I say that one's important is here, this is how we handle the explosives in the game. So they're assigned a type. They can be non-explosive, that would be silly for a grenade. And then we have the standard high explosive, anti-tank, and squash head rounds. But the other things to look at, we actually keep a fragment count. Basically, when the thing explodes, this determines how many fragments it's going to send out in a fairly uniform pattern right now. Theoretically, we could expose other pattern types, but right now it is uniform. And then there's the two variables at the bottom. The explosive mass ratio, what this does is this weighs 0.3 kilos, and this says 30% of that mass is explosives. So that gives us an idea of how much actual explosive is in it. In this case, it would be about 0.1 kilos. And the fragment mass ratio, this is similar, but determines how much of the mass of the device will go into fragments that are being hurled around when it explodes. So that's how we're handling explosives. And so when these go off, we actually do two damage types. So there's shockwave damage that's simulated in game. And then for each of these fragments, we actually do a hit scan to see where they end up before they lose all their energy. So there was another question which I wanted to talk about, which was what is ammo type and how is it different from ammo? So I'll look in our UI and I'll find you some ammo here. Actually, I'll just go to one of the weapons and go to ammo type. So this is actually an ammo. It's a 6mm rifle round. And it's got what you typically associate with ammunition. Velocity, what is it made of, how dense it is. And if it were to have explosives, there could be some extra information down here. And this is ammo type. And what ammo type is for us, it's a description of a class, for lack of a better term, of round. So when you think about that, you think about things like pistol rounds typically are fairly fat and fairly short. So they have their own length-to-width ratio. I think it's usually around 2. But rifle rounds are typically more aerodynamic, they are longer, and they're more stable. So we adjust the values for the different classes here. So this is actually applied in the game to all the rifle rounds right now. But you can see a penetration value. If you wanted to implement armor-piercing rounds, you could modify this value, set it to like 2 or 3, and you would have an AP round very quickly. That would also reduce damage because damage is calculated on the dissipation of energy in the target. So if it's penetrating more, it's dissipating less. For aerodynamics, if you wanted it to carry its energy further out, you could adjust that up or down. Stability, this one is important in terms of how much the round is affected by things like wind and just generally how much is it going to diverge. And accuracy, this is an MOA. Basically, it's a property of the round type of how much, in terms of minutes of accuracy, do you expect the round to diverge upon leaving the barrel of the weapon. So a higher number means less accurate at initial launch. And the explosive type here, this will actually get cleaned up. It really shouldn't be in this location. But if you wanted to implement hollow point or armor piercing, we would do it by just adjusting the values here and then implementing another, let me go back to 6mm here. We'd implement another one of these, would be 6mm hollow point, and we would have a different ammo type, but the rest of the information could be kept the same. So there was a question about weapon weight balance. So the way we handle weapon weight balance, we're actually somewhat limited on this front at the moment. Let me find one of our weapons over here. I don't think I showed this in the other video where I talked about items. So let me open up one of our guns in the game. Let me grab a rifle here. Say R60. Might as well use the one that shoots the thing we were just talking about. So this is one of the conventional rifles. You see in the description that it has a weight, which is in this case 3.5 kilos. So that's just normal item information. But when we look at descriptions for weapons specifically, here is item weapon, you see it's got a couple links, extended or normal and collapsed. So that's for weapons with a folding stock, so you can actually have two different links depending on if the stock is extended or collapsed. When they're the same, it means it's fixed, you can't change it. So what we do for aim times is we actually use both the length of the weapon and we use the mass of the weapon, and we use that to compute how fast we can bring it on target for a specific character. We don't currently deal with polar moment of inertia, so if you put all the mass in the middle versus on the two ends, we don't currently model that. If we decide to, it'd be a modifier here where we would use an even, where the mass is evenly distributed through the length would be 1. Mass bulked in the center would be less than 1, and if it was distributed on the ends it would be greater than 1. So it would be a simple modifier, and that would apply throughout the system and everything else would work. So now I'm going to hop back to Unreal. So we actually just did the upgrade moving to 4.15.1, and that caused us to do a few updates to dealing with input. It seems like every time we update Unreal we have to fix a couple things with our input handling to make it work with the new version. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, I'm going to start the game here, not really to do much of anything, but on the bottom left of our thing where we have the body cam, so we added code a little while back to hide that for performance constrained systems. What we're going to do before we ship in early access is actually change that. So we're going to use this space and be able to toggle it between the camera and a minimap mode. We haven't yet decided if we'll make the image slightly larger in minimap mode or not. But the idea is to use that space for tactical information. And we're expecting that when it's set to map mode, it's going to use far less performance than when it's set to 3D mode. So that'll effectively replace the camera off mode that we have right now. So I'm loading a night mission here to test the lighting. Someone asked about field of view, and so map is starting. So we have right now some very crude ways of visualizing this. I'm going to go with follow high. Basically you can see where things are illuminated by the camera's light, or by the character's light. This is a crude thing. We did this a couple months back, so that's just holding L on the keyboard. Before we actually ship, we're going to, for the final release, we're going to do something more involved, but the intent is that we'll be able to visualize what your characters see. The exact form of that is still in determination, because we have some trade-offs in terms of how much processing we do and how much of a performance impact we're willing to allow it to take. But we'll sort through that. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about our plans for early access. For early access, there's a couple things we want to finish and improve that we didn't have ready for the demo. So one of the things we wanted to do for early access is update the UI. And so I have a screenshot here of some of the work in progress. The important thing to know is, one, this is nowhere near final, but two, we're actually trying to keep as much of the functionality of the UI in place. So meaning the organization, the layout isn't going to change much, but what we're doing is swapping out a lot of the buttons, backgrounds, and assets so that they'll be a little more visually rich for the users. So another thing that we're working on that we'll hopefully have finished for early access, at least the very first version, is cleaning up the map edge. So if I scroll, this is one of the maps just generated randomly. So we have this hard edge of the map that actually shows you where the map ends. Because we're generating the maps randomly, we can extend out the map as far as we want. It's just random generation. We can add to it, I don't say to infinity, but basically it becomes just a performance trade-off of how big do we want to make the map versus keeping things efficient for the player. So what we're going to do is keep the actual playable area the same as what shipped in the demo. So we'll still have the 3 normal size maps, being 256 meters to 512 and 1 kilometer. And then depending on the difficulty, you can actually go up or down 1 notch from that. So that will not change, but what will change is we'll actually generate slightly larger than that whenever we're generating a map, so that this area, in this case on the left, will be extended out, and then there will be a fogging effect or some other effect. I haven't determined exactly what we're going to use to kind of blend that area away. So it's still going to be the edge of the map, but it's going to be a little less visually distracting than what we've implemented here. So we're going to go back to the base. The reason being is I wanted to walk over to the mission selection UI. So I'm going to just take our shortcut here for those who haven't tried it. We can actually go to areas of the base directly by just clicking on the desk. It saves you a lot of walking around if you don't want to walk around. So I'm just going to grab the first mission here. So we had this button, it was in the demo that wasn't enabled, called Equipment. So this is one of the things that we want to finish before we go to early access. We consider it one of the milestones we have to achieve. Effectively, after you pick your character's appearance, whether it be field or fancy, you'll be able to then go and pick the equipment for the character. So each appearance will have its own default equipment, and so if you edit that, it will be edited just for that appearance. It won't affect all 3. The logic being that what you're going to take is going to depend on the environment you're going in. For instance, if you're going to a dinner party to get some information, you're probably not lugging your heavy equipment with you. So that will be coming soon, and with that we'll actually have to edit some things in our inventory and equipment screens. So in the demo, there are actually only a couple of these slots that are functional. So the intent is that we'll enable a few more of them, so you have quick slots for getting at your weapons, for instance. And that'll make some inventory changes a little quicker than they are now and a little easier to work with. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is the missions that will be in early access. So with the demo, we did 5 missions which we created by hand. For the early access, that will be augmented. One of the milestones we really feel is necessary for early access is that we have enough content that the player feels like there's enough to do in the game. Now the way we're doing this is we're going ahead with random mission generation. So this is similar to what you see in a lot of games. There's always been the concept of random encounters. However, since we're not an open world game, random encounters become random missions. So when you go to your intelligence station like I'm at right now, this mission will have additional options in it that are generated by the system, and therefore you'll have a lot of options of what you can do between each storyline mission. Because they're not storyline missions, they are optional by definition. So it's not necessary that you go on any particular one or do them all. One of the other things we're doing to improve missions is we're adding an infiltration stage to the mission. So if you played the demo, every mission started with your entire party at once. The Desert Meat actually gave you a couple options to help you pre-position the characters. But we're taking that idea and we're extending it to a full infiltration phase. An infiltration phase is when you pick one or more characters, and you can skip this phase if you don't want to do it, but you send one or more characters to the area of operation ahead of time. The example is from the Desert Meet in the demo. If you wanted to send your sniper there ahead of time, you could do two things. You could scout the map and see what's there. You could find yourself a good position to overlook where the meeting is happening. So you effectively get your sniper in position, you recon the area, and therefore when the meeting happens, you have advantage by having a sniper pre-positioned. Now, there will be more than just go recon the map. We actually made a pretty long list of infiltration options and the various advantages they might give the main mission phase. A couple examples would be you could be trying to get someone's ID so that you have access to a few doors in the buildings that you wouldn't otherwise. You could be sneaking into a building to disable an alarm system. It's actually a pretty exhaustive list. So this will add a little extra intrigue because these infiltrations, if they're successful, give you an advantage, but they're not guaranteed to be successful. One of the things that can happen is if your character's detected, they could beef up security or do something else, or in the worst case, your main mission goes from whatever you were trying to do to a rescue mission for your first team member or members. So we're hoping that'll add a little extra intrigue to the missions, and I think that's all I had for today's video. And as always, feel free to take a look at the demo or go to spydna.com and get some more information about the game. Thanks for listening.